Is Scalar still good? Scalar is a platformer developed by Artificial Mind and Entertainment, released on the Xbox, GameCube, and PlayStation 2 back in 2004. It was also a budget title, retailing for the wallet-friendly price of just $20. While Artificial Mind and Entertainment isn't a household name, they developed the surprisingly fun and free Doritos Crash Course for the Xbox 360 in 2010. Despite being a budget title and a game I'd never heard of, Scalar was met with mostly positive reviews. The official Xbox magazine scored the game a 6.7 out of 10, stating, "It's no Mario 64 and an occasionally irksome camera frustrates, but Scalar is an enjoyable $20 game." IGN gave the game an 8 out of 10, noting, "Scalar sits in the upper middle class of platformer society. It borrows heavily from its predecessors such as Tak and the Power of Juju, but still manages to eke out its own brand of action and style grounded in solid game mechanics." Finally, GameSpy scored the game an 8 out of 10, proclaiming, "Scalar makes a name for itself in a packed field of contenders. It looks amazing, sounds great, and most importantly, it's a lot of fun." So, is this obscure 3D platformer most have never heard of still good? Let's take a look. Scalar opens with a cutscene showing a guy named Captain Bootcamp interrogating a child named Bobby Scalar Jenkins. During the interrogation, a portal is revealed along with an array of large lizards. After a few minutes of stereotypical bad guy is a doofus banter, Bobby is transformed into a lizard and then escapes the interrogation room by jumping into the portal. If I'm honest, while the story is sound and well acted, I don't find it engaging. Angry lizards from another dimension snatching children is just a little too out there for my personal tastes. But it does what it needs to do. It gives us our hero, a set of villains, and a mission: defeat evil and return home, so I guess it works. The game picks up right where the story left off, the other side of the portal. At its core, Scalar is quite similar to most 6th generation 3D platformers. Scalar has a trio of attacks, including a swipe, a tongue attack, which does less damage but has more range, and a jumping ground pound style attack. Each works well enough with no collision issues, and the tongue attack even has some mild auto-aiming, helping it feel even smoother. Speaking of smooth, Scalar moves, jumps, and double jumps with a real finesse, responding quickly to joystick inputs with no drama whatsoever. Wrapping things up are some basic items to collect. Optional items include clockies, which are these tiny floating orb things found by destroying breakable items and enemies. These are found in the thousands and can be used to purchase upgrades as the game progresses. The second collectible is a crystal gem, and there are 10 per level. The game advises collecting all of these will unlock artwork in the gallery section. About halfway through the level, the action is interrupted with a cutscene where we learn more about our protagonist. Somehow, Bobby Jenkins' notebook is also transported into this other dimension, and a guy named Leon is looking through it. It seems Bobby Jenkins is a lizard-saving freedom fighter and has developed quite the reputation as an activist, hence his nickname, Scalar. Moving on, the final elements of the gameplay are introduced. First is grinding, which serves to mix up the gameplay, requiring basic ducking and jumping to avoid obstacles. It also serves to keep the levels linear, preventing backtracking and promoting forward progression. Second, it also charges up a meter under the life bar, and when full, gives Scalar a bomb attack. Next, each level has a required item to collect, lizard eggs. In order to free this dimension from the lizard nemesis, 20 lizard eggs must be collected, and then Leon will use his portal beacon to locate the correct portal to send Scalar back home. And with that, the first level comes to a close. It's a beast of a level as well, clocking in at a whopping 30 minutes. This is par for the course as well, with levels gradually increasing to 60-minute behemoths as the game nears its conclusion. After finding the egg and leaving the level, a map screen is presented, allowing the player to see some semblance of progress. If you go to the final level, for example, you'll see you need 20 lizard eggs in order to access it. Moving on, we arrive at Bacoldo. Before I get started, however, I went ahead and cashed in my clockies to extend extend my life bar from 3 hit points to 4. With that out of the way, we can get a better idea of how the remaining 9 levels are structured. In the lower left is a map of sorts. While not easy to read, it does a nice job giving a sense of relativity. We can see the 2 large stars, which represent the lizard eggs, as well as 8 smaller beacons to get to. These smaller beacons are enemies, and defeating all 8 enemies unlocks a transformation. In this case, the transformation is the Bakuden, which has access to bombs. These bombs are needed to unlock new areas of the map. However, when in Bakuden mode, Scalar cannot perform his other maneuvers. Thankfully, you can switch back and forth easily once the transformation is acquired. While having the ability to place and toss bombs isn't the most innovative thing in the world, it does vary up the gameplay, and the level design changes to accommodate the new moves. For example, there are shield generators that can only be destroyed with the bombs, platforms and rock walls needing bombs to be revealed, and environmental hazards that can be cleared out using the bombs. The physics engine works great as well, and the player must utilize the curvature of this half-pipe-like terrain to angle the bombs towards hiding enemies. Also introduced are climb paths. When on these, Scalar walks on all 4s and can only use his tongue attack. The designers did a good job mixing up the gameplay, adding variety for these massive levels. Finally, I should talk about the battle arenas. At various points in each level, Scalar will enter a large circular arena. The camera will pan up and a wall will form around the player. The game will then generate waves of enemies for the player to take down. A progress bar is also shown on the bottom, which is nice. Here, the emphasis is on utilizing Scalar's different attacks to defeat enemies. Early on, these are simple, but as the game progresses, larger foes are presented with more complex attacks patterns that must be learned and overcome. And with that, the second level comes to a close. The next area on the map is actually a boss fight. As a whole, the bosses are well done. Here, the player must utilize the Bakuden power-up to take down the shields while avoiding attacks, and then use the second bomb maneuver to damage said boss. The boss has a life bar, the camera does a perfect job keeping everything in view, and it's just a fun way to test the player's skills with the new transformation. The third level is Clonium. The first goal here is to defeat the 4 enemies unlocking the Croc power-up. This is pretty badass, turning Scalar into an indestructible ball. Holding the trigger button will engage spikes, which can mow through everything. With the spikes disengaged, there's also a boost function, allowing for some terrific speed. And of course, after acquiring the new transformation, new areas of the map are now accessible, which forces the player to utilize the new transformation. There are time sections, where if the player doesn't make it to the goal before the clock reaches 0, they are forced to try again. It's tricky for sure, with tight platforms to roll over and pits to get stuck in. Level 4 is Atlas, where Leon hints we should buy the camouflage upgrade, which is needed to clear the obstacles in this world. While cloaked, which lasts for 9 seconds, enemies cannot see Scalar, which is required to pass over these swamp areas. The player is also given the Bakuden transformation in this level. The challenge then becomes utilizing the camouflage in the correct areas, then figuring out which enemies to avoid and which are best taken down with the bombs. Finally, Atlas throws in a ton of grinding sections, requiring Twitch reactions from the player. With 2 more levels completed and a bunch of lizard eggs collected, Scalar arrives at another boss fight. Here, the game builds upon all of those arena-style fights. This boss fight is a battle against 3 separate enemies, each presented one at a time. After defeating the first, Scalar is forced to jump along platforms to the next. However, there are a bunch of power-ups along the path, allowing the player to start each fight with a full health bar. After defeating the 3 enemies, we're off to level 5, Desolum. The first part of this level is a flying section, where the player takes control of the sweet Repidactyl. This is an on-rail shooter. Different projectiles and enemies will launch at the player, and one simply needs to shoot at them before they hit the bird. While holding the fire button, 10 shots can be fired in a row, before you must repress the fire button and begin again. Passing over enemies will lock onto them, so there is a bit of slop allowed. The second part of this level is with the Croc Transformation. 5 challenges are presented along a race course of sorts. Complete the objectives, like finishing in a certain amount of time or destroying a set amount of cocoons, and then move on to the next one. It does a nice job taking advantage of the Croc's abilities as well, forcing the player to switch between boosting and normal mode, and then switch to the spiked mode to break through walls. The 6th level is Cordis. Not much new is presented here, however the difficulty is ramping up as the player crosses the halfway point. Some of this is harder enemy patterns and tougher hazards, but a few things are more annoying. For example, on the grinding areas, the camera occasionally disguises obstacles causing death. There's also some trial and error, like cocoons turning into massive plants, causing damage. Finally, I couldn't figure out how to take down this flame enemy without taking damage. Perhaps I'm supposed to use the jumping attack or something, but I couldn't figure it out. In any case, after snatching more lizard eggs, the player will again find themselves at a boss fight. And again, the boss fight forces the player to use previously learned skills. In this case, the boss fight takes place in the air, with Scalar riding the Repidactyl. The player needs to balance destroying incoming attacks with doing damage to the giant flying crab thing. I found this challenging at first, but I'm also not well versed with flying games in general, so the learning curve was steep for me. Still, once I mastered the mechanics, this fight can be completed in about 4 minutes, so it's not too bad. Level 7 is Medusa, which is the most platform-heavy area found in the game. Thankfully, Scalar's precise controls and double jump make this a lot of fun. While I did miss jumps a few times, falling to my death, it always felt like it was my own fault, rather than the game being cheap. About halfway through the level is a bird sub-boss in an arena, which is actually kinda neat. It will launch flaming projectiles, which Scalar will then need to launch back to do damage. The camera does a great job keeping both Scalar and the sub-boss in view, and this ends up being a lot of fun. Defeating this foe will also unlock the Dusim Transformation. With this transformation, the player is challenged to fly through rings within a time limit, utilizing the boost function to increase speed, as well as the attack function to take down foes impeding progress. A second flying area is also presented, where the player needs to use the trigger button for sharper turns, and make it through a narrow tunnel without touching anything. If I'm honest, both flying challenges feel a bit sparse. While the execution is fine, the controls are accurate, the collision detection perfect, and lacking in anything frustrating or unfair, they just feel a bit tacked on and stray too far from the platforming formula for my tastes. Level 8, however, returns the focus back to running and jumping. There are lizard mode areas, plenty of battle arenas, and more rail grinding. After making it through a gauntlet of challenges, Scalar learns the Croc Transformation, which offers a great ranged attack, including sniping. The sniping is actually put to really good use, placing obstacles in the air to snipe down to form platforms, and then requiring the player to transform back into the lizard to jump on the platforms. It's both challenging and fun, and I love how the designers continue to force the player to use their noodle to figure out obstacles, even as the game is in the home stretch. With 2 more levels completed, Scalar of course arrives at another boss fight. This one requires the use of the Fruzard, first attacking the boss's eyes. From here, the player must transform back into the lizard form to hit the grind rail, avoiding the boss's attack. Once at the next area, Fruzard is needed to clear out the spiked cocoons so the various wind-style attacks can be navigated without taking damage. Repeat the boss cycle a few times, and we move on to the final pair of levels. Voidrum is the 9th level and introduces the final transformation, Swoom. This is a swimming ability, but the water sections are used sparingly, acting as a path to various landmasses. Minor puzzle elements are presented as well, with the player being forced to locate 3 switches to unlock the next area. Finally, Camuldo is the 10th level. This opens with another flying section on the back of the Repidactyl before turning into a proper platforming level. I also found this final level pretty frustrating. The difficulty has increased nicely through the first 9 levels, but I feel like this 10th level takes a massive leap into the insane category. The biggest culprit are surprise enemies. Dragons will fly up out of nowhere, and their attacks do double damage. This means a lot of dying and repeating sections as the player learns their locations. The checkpoints are extremely generous, but I find these sections annoying. Next, the final battle arena is just insane. The game throws everything at the player, and making it through this gauntlet is maddening. The biggest issue is the camera, which doesn't do a good job of communicating what is being spawned to the player. The result is more trial and error, as one slowly learns what enemies will spawn and when. Finally, the rail grinding turns from enjoyable to broken. Up to this point, switching rails has been easy and painless, but here, the rails are so short, perfect timing is required. Fail at perfection and you're taking a drink. I will forgive the game a little bit as it is the final level, but the first 9 levels rarely feature cheap hazards to challenge the player, so it's disappointing the challenge found here isn't more organic. This brings us to the final boss. As has been the case thus far, the final boss is awesome. The main gimmick here is avoiding his attacks while using these energy pads to charge up your bombs. These pads work like the grind rails, and at this point I'm up to 4 bombs thanks to buying upgrades. After avoiding electric attacks, jumping over hazards, all while getting in your attacks, enemies are then thrown into the arena. Because the camera functions properly here, these are fun challenges. After doing enough damage to the final boss, he finally steps into the ring. This combines the arena-style fighting while requiring the player to charge up the bombs to do damage. As a whole, the final boss is excellent, perfectly blending platforming, pattern recognition, and utilizing the combat engine to create an engaging fight that is challenging for the right reasons, therefore being very satisfying once completed. With the 20 lizard eggs captured and all of the enemies defeated, Leon is able to open a portal for Bobby Jenkins, who returns back home, now free of the baddies featured in the opening cutscene. Strangely enough, Leon doesn't make it, suggesting to me there might be a good ending hiding in here somewhere. In any case, with the game defeated, the credits roll. Graphically, Scalar is impressive. Technically, the game shines. The texture work is outstanding, easily matching the AAA titles of the time. Polygon counts are high, with all of the foliage looking detailed. The animations are top-notch as well. Scalar's movements are all fluid, and his hair and tail move realistically as he bounces around. Same goes for the enemies. Leg movements, attack patterns, everything looks great. Small enemies are quick and nimble, while large enemies move with a heft matching their size. Draw distances are far, helping each world feel massive and infinite. I also love the special effects, like the distortion with certain enemies and while underwater. About the only technical flaw to speak of is the screen tearing, which is at times distracting. Still, the frame rate is high, staying near 60 frames per second a majority of the time. Now, I am playing this on the Xbox and can't speak to the quality of the PlayStation 2 or GameCube versions, but on the Xbox, this one is excellent. Artistically, I find Scalar to be stunning. It actually reminds me of the movie Avatar, yet this one debuted 5 years before. Each of the 10 levels has a unique color palette and theme, from jungle to desert and everything in between. Yet they all feel connected thanks to a dream-esque-like aesthetic. Each level feels alive thanks to plant life swaying, subtle weather effects, and an awesome glow. For me, it's the glow that ties everything together, with various plant life and other elements offering a glow helping the world feel alien. It all adds up for one of the most visually impressive 6th generation titles I've played in a long time. The audio is top-notch as well. As I noted earlier, the voice acting is terrific. Bobby Jenkins, Leon, the bosses are all voiced brilliantly with a Saturday morning cartoon level of quality. The in-game audio follows suit. The background music has a jungle vibe to it, but with a unique mix of instruments to prevent it from sounding earthly. This mixes well with the environmental sounds of wind, Scalar's jumping groans, and various enemy attacks. It makes for a rich soundscape that sounds far larger than the budget price tag would suggest. So, with all of that out of the way, we arrive back to the question asked at the beginning of the video. Is Scalar still good? I'm just going to cut right to the chase. Scalar is a great game. The combat is solid, with the tongue attack dispatching smaller enemies and freezing larger enemies. The claw attack has a great range and is free from collision issues. Maneuvering around the 3D world is intuitive and natural, and the jumping is damn near perfect. In fact, throughout all 10 levels, there is exactly one platform that gave me problems. 1. But even more impressive is the level design. I love how the levels have an open vibe, yet are structured in a linear way, preventing the player from getting lost or going in circles. Transformations and power-ups are provided at a perfect pace, opening up new areas of the levels while also changing up the gameplay to prevent anything from ever becoming stale. The pacing here is simply phenomenal, and the hours would melt away without me realizing how much time I was sinking into the game. Finally, I have to give special mention to the bosses. Each of the 5 bosses is unique and well thought out. I love how each requires a different strategy, building upon the skills learned in the previous levels. The patterns are fun to learn and satisfying to overcome. The difficulty arises from well-crafted patterns rather than frustrating gimmicks. Scalar isn't perfect, of course. My biggest gripe are the battle arenas. It's not even the arenas themselves that bother me. The enemy waves are challenging, requiring quick reflexes and a mastery of the attacks, and it's fun to utilize the tongue to stun enemies and then bash them, or letting one enemy's fire attack damage another enemy. Rather, it's the camera. Sometimes it's well positioned and helpful, other times it's a hindrance blocking important information from the player. There are a few minor issues as well. It's tough to see these moving blocks, for example, which blend in with the toxic goo surrounding them, and the final level does fall from grace, with surprise enemies being used to artificially increase the difficulty, and the rail grinding going from a fun gimmick to a frustrating one, with precise timing not really matching the mechanic. But other than that, Scalar is a terrific platformer. Other than the 20 lizard eggs, collecting elements are kept to a minimum, preventing the game from feeling grindy and tedious. Each of the 10 levels introduce new moves, and then crafts level gimmicks that actually require use of the new skills, and the difficulty curve from beginning to end is about as perfect as it can get. At the end of the day, Scalar is a delightful platformer that was unfortunately released about 2 years after the gaming world grew tired of 3D platformers. If you haven't heard of this game or skipped it because the cover looks like a Spyro ripoff, give this one a try. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.